It's 7:42 on a Tuesday evening, and Barbara Whitfield picks up a phone call from a number she doesn't recognize. 11 minutes later, she's standing at her own front door, handing a stranger an envelope with $13,000 in it. She wasn't careless. She wasn't confused. She heard her grandson's voice. His exact way of saying, "Grandma," crying on the other end of the line. It was never him. Here's exactly how 11 minutes and a cloned voice took a retired teacher's savings. Barbara taught third grade for 31 years before she retired. She lives alone now, in the same house outside Dayton, Ohio, where she raised 2 kids, including her daughter, and her daughter's son, Tyler, 24, in his second year of law school. Tyler calls most Sundays. That Tuesday wasn't a Sunday. But when the phone rang and a shaking voice said, "Grandma, it's me," Barbara didn't hesitate for a second. Why would she? It sounded exactly like him. The number on the caller ID meant nothing to her. Probably a new phone, she figured, or a work line. She almost let it go to voicemail. Then, something made her answer. The voice on the other end was crying so hard it took a few seconds to make out words at all. "Grandma, I messed up. I'm so sorry." Barbara's chest tightened immediately. It was Tyler's voice. The same slight rasp he'd had since he was 16. The same way he said, "Grandma," instead of "grandmother." Every instinct told her this was real. Through sobs, the voice explained. A car accident on the way back from a study group, another car involved, and the worst part, a pregnant woman in that other car. Police were already there. He'd been arrested. He was scared, he said, more scared than he'd ever been, and he begged her not to tell his mother, yet not till they'd have not until they knew the woman was okay. Barbara's mind raced through every worst-case scenario a grandmother could imagine, and none of them left room to ask a single clarifying question. Then a second voice came on the line. Calm, official, clearly in charge. He introduced himself as the arresting officer and explained the situation in flat, procedural language. Bail had been set. It needed to be posted in cash within the hour, Hearset Inia said. And, under no circumstances should she call the police station directly or tell any other family member, because it could complicate the case and delay Tyler's release. Barbara, a woman who'd spent 3 decades trusting authority figures in front of a classroom, did exactly what this one told her to do. She was told exactly what to say at the bank if anyone asked. Home renovation, cash for a contractor. Barbara drove to her branch with her hands shaking on the wheel the entire way. At the counter, the teller paused. $13,000 in cash was unusual, and she gently asked if everything was all right. Barbara smiled, repeated the line about the contractor almost word for word, and asked her to hurry. The teller had no way to know a script was running in real time, feeding Barbara exactly what to say. Back home, the officer called again with new instructions. A bail courier would come to her door within the hour to collect the cash and issue a receipt, since the courthouse itself was backed up processing paperwork. Barbara sat by her front window watching the street, until a car she didn't recognize pulled up. A young man in a plain jacket walked to her door, said Tyler's name and a case number to confirm he had the right house, and took the envelope. He was gone in under a minute. The officer had promised a callback, confirming Tyler's release within 30 minutes. An hour passed. Then 2. Barbara tried the number that had called her. It rang once and disconnected, over and over. She told herself the courthouse was probably still processing things, that these things take time, that Tyler would call the second he could. She sat in her kitchen with the landline in her lap. staring at the phone, feeling something she couldn't quite name yet. Not relief, not yet fully fear, just a heavy, waiting kind of quiet. Just before 10, Barbara finally called her daughter, breaking the one rule she'd been given, because the silence had become unbearable. Her daughter answered on the second ring, sounding completely normal, mid-sentence about something on TV. "Wait, Tyler's arrest? Mom? Tyler's right here. He's been at my house all evening." Barbara heard her grandson's actual voice in the background, laughing at something on the television, utterly unaware that a version of him had spent the last 3 hours convincing his grandmother to hand a stranger her savings. Barbara did everything a loving grandmother would do. She wasn't careless, and she wasn't foolish. She was targeted, deliberately, with a tool built specifically to bypass the one thing that usually protects us from strangers: recognizing a voice we trust. So let's slow the 11 minutes down and look at exactly which levers were pulled, one at a time, and why they worked so completely. The voice Barbara heard wasn't a good impression. It was a clone, built from audio clips of Tyler's real voice, likely pulled from old social media videos or voicemails. Researchers and the FBI have both confirmed that modern voice cloning tools need as little as 3 to 10 seconds of someone's speech to generate a convincing match, including their pitch, pacing, and speech patterns. In 2025, the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center logged more than 3,000 elder fraud complaints referencing AI, with losses topping $350 million. And distress scam losses tied specifically to voice cloning crossed $5 million in that same year alone. The moment Barbara heard crying that sounded like her grandson, her brain didn't process it as information. It processed it as danger. That's not a character flaw, it's basic neuroscience. A perceived threat to a loved one triggers the amygdala, the brain's alarm system, which floods the body with stress hormones and temporarily dampens the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for slow, skeptical, step-step thinking. Scammers don't need Barbara to be gullible. They just need her scared enough, fast enough, that the analytical part of her brain never gets a turn to ask an obvious question. 2 more tactics stacked on top of the fear. First, isolation. Don't tell your mother yet. Cut Barbara off from the one person most likely to spot something wrong. Second, manufactured authority. Handing the phone to a fake officer added a layer of institutional pressure that most people, especially a generation raised to respect uniforms and titles, are trained not to question. Combined, these 3 levers, a cloned voice, a hijacked fear response, and a fake authority figure telling her to stay quiet, left almost no room for Barbara to pause and verify anything. Here's what to watch for, because these signals repeat in nearly every version of this scam. 1. Extreme urgency paired with a request for secrecy. Legitimate emergencies almost never require you to hide the situation from other family members. 2. A request for cash, gift cards, cryptocurrency, or a courier pickup instead of a traceable bank transfer. Real bail, real hospitals, and real courts don't operate that way. 3. A second caller who claims official authority. A real police officer will never personally collect bail money and will never object to you calling the courthouse directly to confirm. 4. Something slightly off in the voice. A strange pause before certain words, a flatness in emotion that doesn't quite match the crying, or phrasing that doesn't sound like how that person actually talks. 5. And this is the big one. You're being pressured to act within minutes, with no time given to think, verify, or call anyone else. Any one of these alone is worth pausing over. 2 or more together, in the same call, should stop you completely before you do anything else. The single most effective defense costs nothing. Agree on a family safe word nobody outside your household would ever guess. And make it a rule that any emergency call involving money gets verified with that word before anything happens. If a call ever demands secrecy, cash, or speed, hang up, not out of rudeness, just to break the pressure and call that family member back directly on the number already saved in your phone, not a number the caller gives you. A real emergency will always survive a 2-minute pause to verify. A scam never does. Barbara reported everything to her bank and to the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center the next morning. The money was gone. Cash handed to a courier is nearly impossible to trace back. But she did one more thing that mattered. She called every person in her family and told them exactly what happened, step by step, so it could never work on any of them the same way twice. That phone call is the reason this video exists. Consider sending it to someone in your life who'd pick up the phone the same way Barbara did. If this helped you spot something you didn't know to look for, subscribe. New scam breakdowns every week. Next time. The 6 words a romance scammer says in the first message that should end the conversation immediately.